Hello everyone and welcome to another video. I'm Ribbert and this is gonna be one of my builds. It's a new region, as you can see. This is not just a city tile that's loading, it's actually the entire region. And it's a very small region. I made this small because I found the big regions a bit overwhelming and I thought maybe some other players might feel the same way, so I thought I'd create something like this for people who just want to do a little bit of a diorama kind of build that is not gonna take you years to build it, but it might take you a couple of months to make something nice here. So I made this region thinking I wanted something with the lake and something with some mountains, because I do like mountains, and I've installed a whole bunch of new mods that I'm one by one gonna show off. This is gonna be more farm centric episode, so I'm gonna be showing off the SimPeg Agricultural Mod. But first I started over here. I built this in between episodes, or well, before episode, because this is the first episode of the new, I guess you could call this a season or a series. And this is gonna be the first one of the second series that I'm putting out there. And this little castle build that I did was for the Halloween. It's a bit of a contest where people could submit their own little Halloween build, and the theme was Dracula's castle or Dracula's home. I'm not sure if I understood the competition perfectly well, but I made a couple of screenshots with this little area that I built with some creepy trees and a little bit of waterfall and stuff. And I posted that on the Simtropolis website, so if you want to, you can still go there and vote. I believe the poll should be open until Saturday, but I'm not sure. But yeah, you should check out at least what these other people built. Although, yeah, okay, just go check it out if you want to, and if you don't feel bad about it. It's fine. So I'm gonna be building a little bit of a farming town, which you would know if you read the title of the video, I guess. And why am I building a farming town? Well, I think in realism, for yeah, if you want to be a bit realistic about starting a new region, yeah, I think it makes sense to have to start with a farming town, because you need some place where your food comes from. And I've always found it weird how you could just get a super big city with like millions of people without a single farm in your region. So that's also why I installed the SimPeg Agricultural, the spam mod. Well, it's mainly because I just wanted to see those farms and try to see if I could find some interesting builds for them. Here I'm trying. I also installed, because I started with a completely new plugins folder, I installed the NAM Network Add-on Mod version 38. So that changed the way the rails behave, I believe. Because at some points I just get some really weird behavior that I'm not used to with the rails when I'm trying to smoothen out some roads or some land. They seem to be taking the current slope that they start on and extending that rather than trying to make it as flat as possible. I don't know. In some moments you might notice it, that it's a bit weird. Yeah, so I'm building this little farming town here, and what I'm aiming to do here is just give a good start for the region. So that's both in terms of realism and in terms of a type of structure that I'm gonna base most of my builds off of. To try to keep it consistent, I will try to find some systems and some ideas that I can just copy over to other areas of the map. And here I'm trying these fences, and By now I've learned that this is a common glitch, and you can actually go into the zone view mode in the overlay for zoning, and that should fix it when you go back to normal view. Yeah, I haven't tried that yet, but if it doesn't work like that, I'll just cut out what I just said. So if it's in the video, then I've tested it, and that's the way it works. So I do like those fences a lot. I really love those, but I don't get why they derp out so much harder than the other fences. I guess it's because they're partially textured and the other ones don't have a texture at all, which somehow makes a difference to the way. I don't know. It had something to do with base textures and the way the game, just calculates which texture to render or not. And yeah, I just don't get why it derps out like that. I can understand that there's some graphical limitations to the game, and I suppose they never designed the game to be used with transparent textures, but yeah, I guess they never designed the game to be modded at all anyways. So I think we should be happy with what we have here. Yeah, so here you can see me doing some of that rail dragging, and it went all the way up there. And I think it has to do with the starting slope that I had. So I started with the flatter piece, and then it went in a more normal direction. I'm not sure that that's the case, but I think it has to do with that. Here I'm building a little bit of a viaduct, pretty simple build, and now I'm gonna try to decorate it, but I'm not gonna show all that because it took me a super long time, and I built basically 4 variants of it. This is one of them. This is using some shore walls. This is using some of the JPN walls and some of those diagonal pieces at the edges. And there's one more where I used some texture of some mod, but the shadows didn't show on those textures, so I thought it looked weird. So I ended up with this, which is a mix of the second one with the shape of the last one and using some plants to round off the edges instead of using the diagonal props. And I think it looks pretty nice. Here I'm just continuing the rail. I started off by doing the infrastructure, or the main infrastructure, I guess. I went into the city beforehand to try some things out and to look for ways to start a new build. I did some testing because I didn't want to do too much derping while I'm filming myself. So yeah, I basically did a little bit of testing, and I started here by continuing on the testing that I've done, because I had built a little bit with this new it's a canal set that I'm using. It's not on any American website, but I somehow found a link to a Japanese website of a modder named Moonlight, I believe, and he made a bunch of pretty amazing stuff. And these canal textures, they are pretty robust to height changes. Normally they would show seams very easily, but these are actually pretty good on slight slopes. But you do want to you do want to keep that to a minimum, because at some point you will see that the textures derp out a bit, and I end up, because I'm still learning how to use this set, and I end up just having to build and delete and build and delete for a little while, and I try to just speed that up a bit more in order to keep you from having to see all my derps. Yeah, so I do like that canal set a lot. You might find that it looks a bit weird with all the height changes and stuff that I'm gonna make it go through, but I think the only thing weird about that is that the water stays on the same level. For the rest, I think I've seen stuff like that in real life, at least in the places where I've lived. There's been a lot of canals where the walls aren't just one specific height. Although there would be canal locks in between the different heights, I guess. But this set didn't have those. And I liked the look of the walls enough to just make a compromise on realism for it, because I don't know, it just looks very, very Dutch to me, even though it's based on Japanese canals. I guess Japanese know a little bit about building canals as well. So yeah, I'm very thankful for whoever, for that Moonlight guy that made that mod. I'm gonna put a link in the description to his blog where you can find this mod, and I'll also put a link directly to the download because it's kind of hard to find it in his blog. There's a couple of pictures that actually show this set, but are from a building that's right next to the set, and yeah, that ended up derping me out a bit, and I had to use Google Translate, and Google Translate didn't work very well on the page, so I had to copy the text from the titles from the things from the, I guess the mods that he posted, and use that to know what I was looking at. And in the end, I figured it out. I just really wanted that canal because, yeah, there's other good-looking canals out there, but yeah, I don't think any of them come very close to this. Some might be more functional in the parts that they have and stuff like that, but the watercolor looks very realistic to me for a canal. And I think the puzzle pieces, it has enough puzzle pieces to be able to build pretty much anything. Although you don't, as I said, you don't have canal locks and stuff like that, so that little bit of realism might be lost. Though you can make any shape with it. It has all the corners, the diagonals, all the stuff. So I really love this Japanese canal set. And here I'm gonna build a bit of a viaduct. Now in the Netherlands, when we have I don't want to speak for all of the Netherlands, but where I live, there's a lot of these little canals near farmlands and near just generally near farm villages and small villages like this. There tends to be one of those canals, and that might just be because the Netherlands is at least the part of the Netherlands where I live is mostly below seawater, so we just need a lot of this water infrastructure to keep the lands from flooding, and I think it probably has a lot to do with that. Yeah, but they look really cute in these little villages, I think. And so I tried to use that idea and to represent that with these canals. In the villages that I know that have these similar kind of things, the canals might look a bit different. They might be of a more, they might have wooden sidings, but I'm not actually sure. I think they actually might have concrete sidings as well. But I think this comes close enough for me to feel comfortable using it. And yeah, that bridge might look a bit weird with the middle pillar not going all the way down, but I think it's alright. I might see if there's a specific puzzle piece for empty land with it skipping a pillar. I don't know. Yeah, here the rail leveling derped out a bit, but if you give it a starting and an end anchor point by putting some roads or some single bits of rail down, then it doesn't derp out as much. So I hope you understood what I just said, but if you don't, it's alright. Just experiment with it and try some stuff out. Now here I'm using some of those fences again. This time the brown fences for the rail. I used the barbed wire fence because I thought it would have a bit more of an industrial look, and I think it makes sense to have a bit more heavy-duty fencing for a rail that comes near town, because you don't want people to be able to climb onto the track too easily, because that could lead to some pretty ugly accidents. Yeah, so here I'm planning to use this little empty area to build 2 different farmlands. And I was looking to the puzzle pieces there, and there wasn't really a good T. Well, I think there was a good T. The one that I just showed was probably fine, but I just had in my mind that you needed to use the. Yeah, it's a bit hard to see, but those little pieces, they are for entryways, and they allow for the farm lot to smoothly connect um, to your roads. And it doesn't always automatically line up perfectly. Sometimes you have to bulldoze it and put a towel over or two. But I've seen a bunch of times that it just automatically lined up, and I was pretty happy about that. Um, you don't have to use those, but it's for the connection. It makes the transition from road into your farming buildings a bit more smooth. So I think it's a pretty nice addition to the mod. Yeah, so I thought that you'd those little pieces when you hover them over the land, I guess, they show one more bright um, part and a couple of smaller parts, or yeah, each piece shows some different parts. But I thought that the wider parts had to be the driveways, but it's perfectly interchangeable. It doesn't derp out your farms or anything, so don't really know why they chose to make it look distinguishable between the broad and the smaller one. But they did it, and it ended up derping me out a little bit. Uh, I only learned that by the end of the video, but it's fine. Now over here I'm looking to fill in that little triangle over there, but yeah, the road didn't want to spawn any grass or whatever. So for now I just left it like that. Later on I'll actually fix that. And here I'm derping around with the rail, and I didn't realize this until much later. Well, I kind of realized it by here, but it's the T crossings that were derping out the rail. Because of course a T crossing um, can't be on an angle, it has to be perfectly level. And that meant that the rail couldn't be dragged across to make a smooth slope, because it would mean that it would be on a slope. And yeah, I didn't realize it back then. I could have realized it, but later on I'm still derping around with that, I believe. But it's fine. It's fine. I think by watching myself derp around sometimes, it really helps me figure out, or it gives me the time to think about why what I'm doing isn't working. And also gives me more time to come up with ideas for the next part of this build, which is gonna be up next week, probably, most likely. I've been pretty good at keeping a schedule so far, though yeah, you never know what life's gonna throw in your direction. So I'm not really scared of making promises, but I don't think it's necessary to make promises. If you really like these videos, you can just subscribe and put some notifications on or whatever, and then you'll see when the video is up. But in general, it's probably gonna be up next Friday. Yeah, when you look at these streets on the bridge, there's a little bit of grass near them, and I think I'm gonna look for a mod to remove that bit of grass. I've already been looking for that, but I haven't tested it, so I'm hesitant to say that I'm gonna find or that I have found a mod. I did find a mod, but I'm not sure how well it works with the special textures that I'm using, and I might just have to do some modding myself, maybe. Although I'm not a modder, all right. I think I could learn to mod, but I also think that I might be underestimating how difficult it is to learn to make a mod. But I think it's just a process of starting with some simple things that you make. And I do think it would be nice to make some interesting mods. I think I would have some cool ideas that I could maybe make if I were good at it. But I'm not actually sure if I have some cool ideas. It might just be that I'm a bit narcissistic and I think that I can do anything sometimes. Sometimes I do think that if I just pay enough time, I can learn anything. But that's not really true because there's plenty of things that I'm never really gonna be good at. But I think just trying to be good at anything is already a valuable experience. Yeah, so here I built some more of these fences. I do think these farms with the fences look very nice. And so I think it's worth building the fences, though from a gameplay perspective I just thought about some. I didn't want to have too many super wealthy people moving in right away. So I tried to discourage them by some pretty high taxes, but if you make the taxes too high, you can actually block your city permanently. I think I read that if you for instance put your taxes on the maximum of 20 for too long, or maybe not even too long, maybe just doing it already I'm not sure if it's for permanently, but it's at least for 9 months in game time, because the game always looks at the last 9 months when determining whether taxes are really bad in your city or not. So it would stump growth by a large amount. I do want some high wealth residential, but I don't want. I think the base game just tosses that into the yeah. It just tosses the high wealth around whenever you put a small park anywhere. Early on, at least, that is, and I don't want that. I just want the cute homes, which are mostly low residential and medium residential, and the high wealth homes are always, I don't know, they're quite raggy homes, those big houses with yeah, they look nice, don't get me wrong, but for this kind of city I think it would be nice to have some smaller homes. And I did download a whole bunch of extra house packs, um, in combination with the ones from the mountain theme pack. I downloaded some wall-to-wall housing packs and some diagonal housing packs, which sometimes the diagonal houses spawn at the normal corner, which can derp that out a little bit, so it's a bit annoying, I guess. But I think if you just wait long enough, they turn into a higher growth stage, and then they won't be diagonal homes anymore. Which might also mean that at some point I can't grow them anymore, because I I don't know. I won't worry about that. I'll try doing some of those diagonal buildings in the next build to see if I can get them to grow. I'll have to do some experimenting, of course, because I don't want to do a video of me doing something that I can't actually do in the video. And I'm not sure if this is gonna be the big derp that I did with the canal, but this whole area, yeah, I should have just leveled that area. because the diagonals are a bit more sensitive to terrain derps, and I think it's smart to just level it out a lot. Although, to be fair, I did get it pretty close to right quite early on, but then I made one big mistake, which derped out the terrain. Yeah, so this is pretty close. And when you rotate it, it sometimes fixes, and then I did this. uh, yeah, I wasn't thinking. The thing about diagonal streets is when you build them like that, then they make the ground underneath them perfectly flat. You can actually have diagonal streets on slopes or with some slopage or whatever you call it, with some height variation. But then you need to use that little tool, but which yeah, I just tend to forget to use that. But there's a tool that lets you drop down or plop down a whole yeah, it's like four or a whole bunch of diagonal pieces at once, and that actually doesn't correct the land underneath it. So with that, and you can still make them in go different textures with the street add-on mod and stuff like that. So that's a pretty nice tool to use, and I should train myself to use that tool more because it's very useful. But I did not, and it ended up with me derping around a lot over here, and I kind of think it's funny that yeah, at some point I did feel a bit of frustration at some point. At some point I was like, why won't this work? Uh, but in the end, I think a little bit of frustration, a little bit of blood, sweat, and tears for what I consider my form of art is just normal. Any artist has to suffer for their work, so I wouldn't call myself an artist, but yeah, if you think this, I think what I'm doing now, it's a bit of a hobby and it's a form of art for me. When I see other people build these things, I'm sufficiently impressed to consider it an art. And yeah, so let me just say that for myself. You don't have to agree with this being an art or not, but I think as long as you're doing something that impresses yourself, I think you can call that an art for you. If you learn something from it, or if you just make something that you find so interesting and beautiful that you just want to stare at it for hours. Or maybe not even that, maybe it's just that you make it to impress your girlfriend or whatever. If there's anybody who is impressed by your work, I think you can call it yeah, you can call that art. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I just don't understand what art is. Maybe I shouldn't compare video games to art. Though I do think there's a certain snobbish attitude to classical arts. It's, to some degree, they are right about the amount of effort that those people took to make those paintings. For instance, people like Da Vinci with the Mona Lisa, he was yeah, for his time at least, he was way ahead of his time. And just in general, it's a pretty picture, or it's a very pretty painting. So yeah, I do think he's very talented, and you could you can't really compare what I'm building here to that. But if you look at movies, there are some pretty terrible movies, and yet there's still an art form. There's still a form of expression. So yeah, if and in general, I think games are a certain type of art form, but in some games, it's more the art of the creator of the game that shows out, and in this kind of a game, it's also a lot of that because yeah, a lot of this game and a lot of the things that I'm calling art right now wouldn't have been possible without the creativity of the people that made this game in the first place. But then you can extend that to the mod creators and their creativity. Here I derped out a bit. I accidentally derped out, and I thought I would maybe make it look alright by just plopping some more trees and plants. It's one of those situations, because the thing is, if I want to build those plants, I'm also bulldozing the farm, and that means that I either have to accept that I just lost a little bit of farmland, and um, then plop some ploppable farm field stuff over there, which would be a perfect solution. I think that's probably the better solution. But I didn't like that solution too much. And the other solution would be that you'd have to bulldoze the entire farm, which from a real life perspective, if I'm playing a simulation game and bulldozing an entire farm, it just seems weird to me. Even though I'm probably gonna end up having to do something similar at some point in the game, but it just seems weird for me to bulldoze an entire farm in such a fragile little starting farming town. Yeah, so I didn't do that, and I just thought, why not embrace the little mistake, like a bit like Bob Ross would say, just happy little accidents. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe you like it. Maybe you think it's a happy little accident. Maybe you're just like, it's a bit of a shame. But anyway, I think it looks kind of alright. Yeah, and there's some weird sloping going on there, so the fence is derped out, and I thought, well, maybe I can just make it. Oh, yeah, that road did derp out as well, and yeah, the whole when I used the rails to level this area, it derped out so hard, and yeah, as you can see, I still didn't figure out that you have to make your starting piece a certain level or gradient, and then when you drag, you can continue that gradient. So I ended up just leveling the whole thing out, putting down a road, and then just using some rails to smoothen out that road. And luckily it worked out, but it could have just derped out like big time again. But the slope that's over there, I think it looks pretty interesting with the little bit of a cliff over there. And here I wanted to do a bit of a wealthy mansion kind of farm thing. But it does have a farm, but it's also, yeah, I was aiming to get a big one of those big houses over there. Although I did install some mods that replaced all the Maxis homes with other homes. So I don't actually know if I have a 4x4 house in the pack right now. And here I tried some stones, and yeah, the stones were a bit too enthusiastic. So I tried some of the smaller stones, and I just yeah, I don't know what you'd use those huge rocks for, because they're so smooth. So I mean, smooth rocks in general are rocks that have been beaten by the water and uh, yeah, I think by their base shape, a rock would be very jagged and edgy, and then through erosion in the water when it flows down a stream or down a river, or it just sits in the river and small bits of sand and clay particles crash into it. So yeah, a smooth rock would have been in the water for sure. And I don't know a lot about rocks, alright? I just know a lot about rivers and how water works. And yeah, I guess a big rock like that could be a thing, but I think it would have to be mostly on the water for it to be realistic. So yeah, if you got, yeah, I don't know. I just like rough rocks, rough boulders a bit more than smooth boulders in games like this. Here I'm putting some more fencing, and I derped one out, but I thought let's just keep going. And I ended up fixing it later on. Yeah, it's already fixed. And yeah, just planning a little bit of neighborhoods, I thought, hey, why not put a little bit of a home there? Because a small village like this, I actually live in a pretty small village, but it's not really a farming village. It's more of a people that work in the next city over kind of village. Or maybe not even that, I don't know. It's pretty much in between a whole bunch of big cities. But the village itself is pretty small and cute. And it has a bit of a canal like that. And yeah, I don't know if it has a lot of farms. But yeah, it's a pretty nice village. And I thought it would be nice to make something that reminds me of that village. So that's why I did something with the canals, and I tried to do. Yeah, I think I've downloaded a couple of churches, and I'm not very religious or anything, but the fact of the matter is that these little villages, at least in Europe, they always have a church. So that's why I'm gonna look to put a church somewhere, because I think it makes I just think it completes the look of the European style kinda. I don't I don't want to force this into being European like, but I wouldn't mind if it reminds me a lot of a European city. So I well, wouldn't mind. I don't know why I'm talking like this, so I'm being a bit vague, I guess. But the thing that I'm trying to say is I'm not gonna go into extremes of manually plopping every building and stuff like that, because that's not what a game like this is about for me. The game like this is about uh, me playing with the mechanics of the game, and yeah, that's always gonna be a part of it. I do like aesthetic builds, but I don't want to micromanage everything that gets plopped down. I like the randomness that comes from buildings that grow by themselves, and I like to just keep buildings that aren't exactly what I would have planned somewhere. And I'm not always gonna do that. Sometimes I might, because I'm gonna do some stuff with diagonal buildings, and yeah, that I will be build. I'll just do some testing beforehand, because I don't know what growth stages they are in, so they might not even show up in the next episode, because this is still a very small region. The total population at the end of this video is going to be like 2,500, something like that. And early on I did I watered those buildings because I thought it might help the density of the residents go up a bit, and I think it did. And it also gave them a bit more, yeah, it helped some more wealthy buildings also show up. Yeah, so this is a T bit that you can use. It ends up working perfectly fine. I thought the white part had to be the driveway, but if you look at that, it looks pretty much fine. So I don't know why they made different widths for those. Maybe no, because the white part actually connects. Yeah, what I was gonna say is maybe the white part can't connect to a normal road, but that wasn't the case. So yeah, I don't know. So I'm here using a mix of diagonals and straight bits over there to complement the fractionally angled road. I think it actually looks pretty nice, although the pavement might look a bit derpy on the other side. And yeah, I still think yeah, there were those fences that I tried earlier on that derped out the terrain. I'm gonna test it, and oh, yeah, I think those do look very nice. Although I think they're all the same type of fences. Well, this has 3 different fences. So I'll probably still use this, and I'll just keep this as it is. But another thing that's so nice about those is that they, at one side they had some grass texture, and I don't know if it's always going to be that grass texture, because that means that it wouldn't work next to rails, because the rails have some sort of a brown texture instead of a grass texture. But if it takes the texture from the road, then I would really love to use those near the rails as well. But I'd have to see. Here I'm placing some bus stops, because I have changed some of the network add-on mod settings. By default, I think it's just the amount of cars that go through cities is just unrealistically high. At least for the kind of city and the kind of style that I'm aiming for. In this type of at least where I'm from in the Netherlands, we do, well, the general style is based on where I live. And so I thought it would be interesting to see if I could also simulate the kind of demographics that we use or that we have here. For instance, of all the trips made in the Netherlands, 25% is made by bike. And to simulate that in this game, there's no bikes, so I just made 25% preferred the fastest route, which could allow them to just walk somewhere. And I looked at the demographics later on, and it was actually the case that 25 of all the traffic was people walking somewhere. So that's kind of interesting that I managed to do that. I think, at least I think it's interesting, but you feel free to disagree. I don't really care if you agree or not. But although I do like to hear your opinion. That's the weird thing. I do like to hear people's opinions, but I'm not afraid of disagreeing with people, because yeah, I'm in part it's because I'm okay with feeling stubborn a bit, but also because just because you have an opinion doesn't mean you have to be right? So I'm always interested in people's opinions, although I'm more interested in people's opinions when they actually know what they're talking about, or they've done some research and they've tried to know what they're talking about. But then sometimes it's just interesting to hear someone's opinion when they don't know what they're talking about, just because it's interesting to see how people come to their conclusions. So here I want to do some. I've downloaded a set, and I didn't download one of the dependencies. So there's some brown boxes. There's gonna be 2 more later on in the episode, I believe. But after shooting this video, I already downloaded the thingies that I needed. I'm gonna do some testing to see if it fixes the brown boxes. Yeah, there's 2 more, and I'm just gonna leave those. So here you can see a bit of an overview of the things that I've built. I started with that little fire duct, and then went to those 2 farms with the houses, and as you can see, some pretty nice houses popped up over there. So there's still some wealthy people moving in. That bridge, I still want to do some work on that bridge. But I think I've already installed. Oh, that bridge is a bit broken. I'm gonna fix that. But I already did some research on a mod that would help me actually go underneath that bridge as well. So I'm gonna be fixing that in the next episode, or maybe in between episodes. At least I'm gonna be testing it in between episodes. I might just keep the fixing part if I think it's interesting. yeah, it might be interesting, might be an interesting mod to show off in the next episode. Here's the little pond that I built, and I think it's a bit light on foliage in some areas, so I might... Yeah, I wasn't very thorough in all the foliage that I've put down. And some little apple trees or whatever kind of fruit that was. So as you can see, there's still some Sims that have some job problems in the city. I think it's already coming along pretty nice, and I think it's going in the right direction. I hope you liked this video, and I want to thank you for watching, and I'd like to see you again. Goodbye.